So then I wanted to move on to just giving a brief overview of some of the commands, or sorry, the plugins that we have. So just for this, let me just spin up another example. So I'm just spinning up a tedge demo container. So a new one just to show that it's using the latest 1.4.2 version, and it has some of these plugins already installed. So one of the key changes, and I think we presented it last time, is that we now have the tedge command plugin installed. So previously it was actually called CY command plugin, but we've changed the name of it. So this is an additional community plugin because it is now supporting the tedge interface. So that's using workflows in the background. But because we're using workflows now, we can actually execute it on child devices. So this wasn't previously possible. So if we go to a child device, you'll now see I have a shell command, and everything works as it should. So I can then execute a command. And on this child device, the only thing that's running from the thinedge side of things is the tedge agent. So the tedge agent is running in child device mode, and that's communicating with the main device. So it doesn't have any MQTT broker on this device. So it's a independent device there. It just has one single binary, so the tedge agent running on it, and that's communicating to the broker, which is actually on a totally different device. So in this tedge demo setup, we're just using a Docker Compose kind of setup to spawn multiple containers, where one of the containers is acting as a child device, where it just has a subset of the thinedge components installed, because on child devices, you only need the tedge agent. You don't need all of the mappers because it's not communicating with the cloud. So that should be useful. So I would recommend installing the tedge command plugin. So the README's been updated. So we'll still kind of deliver, as part of this project, the CY command plugin just for backwards compatibility, in case if people still want to use that package. But you can actually automatically upgrade to the tedge command plugin, and that will just replace the CY command plugin. So it's the same one-to-one feature set, plus it can do more. Another significant change that has happened is with the tedge container plugin. So this has had a complete rewrite. It was previously done in POSIX shell, so like a shell script. It's now rewritten in Go, so it can have access to all of the Docker SDKs to access both Podman and Docker engines to then install containers and Docker Compose-like projects on devices. So this will be the way we interface with containers in the future. So if you're looking at deploying containers to devices, look at this, and this can then also be deployed both to a main device and child devices running the tedge agent, because it's just installing a software management plugin. So because the plugin system is then run by the tedge agent, that's why this is automatically applicable to anything running the tedge agent, be it the main device or a child device. So part of like some of the nice new features, which I think was added in late last year, was also support for private container registries. So we have extra documentation on this in the project, where you can either use a simple JSON formatted, so username password kind of setup, or if you want to be a little bit fancier, or if you have the requirement to retrieve the username password from some kind of store or retrieve it from the cloud, you can actually then implement a credentials script to then you'll be called by the plugin to then say, hey, what credentials do I need to then authenticate against private registry? And then you can provide it that way. So, you could even do, requesting to a microservice in Commodity and get the credentials back and then pass them to the appropriate service. So it has a lot of nice new features like that. So I'd recommend upgrading as soon as possible, because you just get all these nice things out of the box. And we've also increased or improved the testability of this. So for all of the, let's see if I can just quickly show it. So for all of the tests, so I can find that quickly. We run against multiple container environments, so that we test against Podman and Docker, so we can prove that it works with both engines, to be sure there's no kind of like hidden bugs in there. So with the tedge container plugin, you can then deploy stuff like a Node-RED container, which makes it very easy to install a Node-RED at a drop of a hat. Because traditionally installing it natively on a device is actually quite cumbersome. They have a script to install it, but it is not very easy to manage, and packaging as a container is much, much easier, and it makes sure you're not kind of installing random stuff onto your device. Everything is nice and encapsulated within your container. Then once it's deployed as a container, then you can use the rewritten Node-RED plugin, which again was previously written in POSIX shell for compatibility reasons. But we kind of reached a little bit of a limit there, that it was getting a little bit too complex to maintain. So we switched to writing it in Go, mostly because it's a little bit, let's say, user-friendly. And if you're already in the Node-RED environment, you're not running it on a really small device, because even installing Node-RED is quite sizable in megabytes on disk. So then writing in Go is probably a little bit more community friendly. So we can get some people from the community contributing to this. But one of the main differences that we now do, so in the original Node-RED plugin, we actually had only support for Node-RED projects. So that is the Git-based Node-RED project management system that they had. We ran into a few problems with that. So mostly it is very, very poorly documented from Node-RED. So there's no like the official API, there's no official API doc. So it was all a lot of like reverse engineering to going, how does it work? What REST API do we need to call, and all this kind of stuff. And it had weird limitations, like you can't uninstall a project. You can switch projects, but not uninstall it, which conceptually is a little bit strange for users to wrap their head around. So we still support Node-RED projects. However, we also support the classic Node-RED flows. So the Node-RED flows API is just, there's a flows JSON file and you deploy it using the well-documented API. So that is now the default software management plugin for the Node-RED projects. So that will be enabled by default, but you can actually choose in between which one you want to use. It depends on how you've configured the Node-RED. So you can only be in either project mode or flow mode. You can't support both, or you could only support it if you run it in 2 different containers. So with this, the deployment becomes a little bit easier, and so you can still deploy flows via compatibility, and we give a bit of direction how to deploy this maybe in your CI pipeline or a CD pipeline. So it's quite easy to interface, and then you can deploy new flows very easily using the software management interface in compatibility. So if there's missing features for any of this stuff, so all the code's available. So sometimes it's useful checking out our public organization and having a look at even just some of the repositories and having a bit of a peek around there to see what's kind of going on. And we're happy to accept any PRs for any of our public repositories. So feel free to kind of create them. And yeah, so that concludes the public demo. Any questions about anything? If not, okay, you can reach out to us as normal, GitHub, Discord, anything. Or if you're a paying tedge customer, through the support tickets. So we have multiple ways. So feel free to put any kind of feature requests or problems or whatever in whatever format. Okay, so thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.